have a differential equation. 2012, 2011, 2010 all had differential equations. And if you can't do this, then you're in trouble, because this to me is the easiest one of all, because this is the one you can memorize the steps to. So let's do this problem. And we have a landfill. It has 1,400 tons of waste. I like to circle the numbers because then I can actually get the numbers out of the problem and say that might be relevant. There's no guarantee. Okay, Zach? And it says I have an increasing function, which means it's either doing this or it's doing that. I just know that. And the increasing function models the total amount of solid waste stored at the landfill. And there's your differential equation that's valid for 20 years. Now, I don't know how valid it really is. I think they do try to get realistic models. W is measured in tons. T is measured in years. Now, they don't ask anywhere for units, so we're okay. I can kind of ignore that if I want. I was really disappointed with A. It's asking for a what? A tangent line. Some of yours was like really hard to see if it was a tangent line. You got a point for finding the derivative.
So you just derive that?
Well, we're going to write the equation of tangent line. You got a point for that, and then you got a point for finding your estimate at 1/4. Now, I did grade this one, but it was 2 years ago, and I'm trying to remember how particular we were. I think we really were looking for the tangent line. Okay, so how do you write the equation of a tangent line? Any line. It's y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. And I really think what bothered you wasn't that, although you should be able to do that. If you can't, come in and see me before school, after school. We will work on it. But the fact that this is not in y and x, this is in what? W and t. Okay, so I write that down because I don't know what's going where. What's the y? Is it w or is it t? It's w. Minus w1 equals my slope, and then it's not x anymore, it's t minus t1. And I know it goes through 0, 1,400. Yeah, some of you still like to do y equals mx plus b. If it had been 1 and 1,400, then you wouldn't have liked it. No, I just always do point slope. Don't even think about it. So it's w minus 1,400 equals the slope, and then it's t minus 0. Solving for y, it's 1,400. No, y. Solving for w, sorry. And you know, if you want to make it y, you can. Who cares? W is equal to 1,400 plus the slope times t minus 0. The slope is dw dt. So we're going to use the initial conditions. It's 1 over 25, right? W minus 300. That's the slope. What's our W? The only number they gave me, by the way. So keep in mind, you know, they give you some hints. It's the only number they give me. Yes, a slope is always a number. Now, you can write 1,400 minus 300 over 25 there, or you could subtract it, or you could even divide it. But why divide it? It's time consuming. But 1,400 minus 300 is not too time consuming. It's pretty easy. Now, some people wanted to divide that, but I'll show you why you don't want to divide it. So you got a point for this. That's a pretty easy point, isn't it? And then we're going to put t equal to 1/4 here. So that's going to be 1/4. And you'll see in about 2 seconds why I don't want to divide it. First off, if I divide it wrong, it's wrong. Then I don't get the point. I take it right back from you. So if you give me 1,100 over 24 or something, or you divide it wrong, then you lose the point back. So don't do that. And it's time consuming. So there were a number of students who did this, and that was perfectly okay. But most people did like to simplify. But this is easy to simplify because that's what? That's 100, right? So it's 1,400 plus 11. So it's 1,411. Because it says use the tangent line to approximate it at 1/4. Okay, I haven't reviewed tangent lines, but we should know how to do that, right? It's 1,411. Then it's going to ask if that's an overestimate or underestimate. Remember, this is increasing. So the tangent line could look like that, or the tangent could look like that. You are looking here, and you're going to estimate with this point or with that point. Right, you have to find out which is it, concave up or concave down. That's what B is. They don't ask you that. They give you help to do that. They say find the second derivative, and they even give you a hint in terms of W, which means that what? In the second derivative, what do you have to have in there? A W. You guys hear that? It says in terms of W, you have to have a W in there. So let's write this down, and we're going to review the chain rule. dW dt is equal to 1 over 25. And actually, the more I get into the problems, the more I see some of the subtleties. And this is 2 years old, so I haven't done this problem that well. I graded this problem, but I normally wouldn't have done it that many times. Okay, now a derivative operator is just that. It's an operator. Okay, Stephen, you need to be paying attention. So it's the derivative with respect to t. Can I pass that through the 125th? Yeah, I prefer to do that. This is dt. Okay, so on the left side, I get the second derivative. And here's the thing, I do remember this, that if you don't get the second derivative correct, even if you interpret it correctly, you still don't get the second point. That's why a lot of you have plus 0, because your second derivative is wrong. It's 1/25th. If this is what you wrote, it's wrong. Because look carefully here. What is the derivative of w with respect to t? It's 1 times dw dt. So guess what they did in 2012 on the bird problem? They did the same exact question. So what do you think they're going to do in 2013? It could be the same. It may not be, but it could be. It's been a long time since we've had related rates, so remind me if I forget to do related rates that we spend a little more time with them. We've done some time. Okay, you get your 1 point right here. Now, to finish this, to find out if it's an underestimate or overestimate, I need to substitute dw dt back in, or I need to talk about it. But this is 1/25th, w minus 300. So what's true about the second derivative? It's always what? Positive. Okay, so you say d squared w dt squared, because that's the other part of doing the problems, is learning how it needs to be written. We've been doing it all year, but now is when it's crunch time. Second derivative is positive on the interval. Now I'm going to get pickier. Maybe I wasn't as picky during the school year, but I'm going to get pickier now. You have to say it's positive on the interval, because it's not just at 1/4. It is positive the entire time, because w is bigger than 300. So then it's an underestimate. I personally would have liked to have seen, and I don't think so. I think this was sufficient, by the way.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen this is concave up, because that really tells me,
Oh, okay.
this tells me it's concave up, which tells me it's an underestimate. It doesn't hurt to write it. I don't think you had to write it, though. Okay, so that's 4 points right there. But if you didn't get the second derivative right, I didn't agree with that. I said, you know, if you got 1/25th there and you interpreted it correctly, then what was wrong with that? But they said, nope, I can't argue with it. It's what they tell me I have to do. So it made it easier to read, much easier to read. Okay, now we're going to solve this. And those of you who solved it with a K in there, I've never done that, ever. Some people did. Is equal to 1/25th. Yeah, that's right. I've never used the K in there. And I've also, no, something else. You go look at the scoring rubric, you'll know what I'm talking about. No, but it's on the scoring rubric. And I don't do it that way because it's harder. The algebra is harder. So we're going to solve that. Now, you guys all know we have to separate. So we're going to multiply by dt. Because you know what's going to happen on the exam? You won't see a problem at all. It looks like any of these. It'll be a different problem until you read it and say, oh, it's the same as the bird problem. Well, unfortunately, they didn't think the bird problem was the same as the waste problem, but it is.
Christy, what is the bird problem?
It's number 5, I think, in 2012. We've done it.
Like, I know we've done it, but you've done the bird problem.
We give names to all these problems.
Where is this bird?
It's number 5, I think. 5 or 6. No, it's 5, because I did 6.
Oh, yeah.
The baby bird. Okay. So dW equals, no, those are the real tests, so they might be zeros. Who knows? The one I looked at looked like a 0 to me, pretty close on the one I looked at. Now, you can't mix your variables. You can't mix your vegetables. Will that help? You can't have them mixed, and you have them mixed. You have a W on this side and a W on that side. You can't do that. Now, they're always going to give you a separable equation, so you always multiply or divide. A number of you want to move the 25 as well. You don't want to do that. You want to keep this W, because you're going to remember what a differential equation is? The solution's a function. So you're going to have to solve for W. So I want to keep it as clean as I can on that side with as few things as possible. But I do have to divide by this, because I can't mix the variables. I got a W and a T. I can't do that. Well, if you don't do this, you're done. That's 5 points. You're done. We give you nothing. Then there were some issues about where do you put the C. That's a different issue. Okay, so
It doesn't matter though, does it?
it matters when you put it in. Okay. Now, some of you can see the integral for this quickly and easily. Some of you can't. So I'm going to do a U substitution. And this is 1/25 dt. Yes, you could put the 25 over there. It just makes it harder. Because then you have to really worry about your constants. Now what do? So we got 1 point. We integrate. And some of you may say, well, there's no t's over there. But that's okay. Because this is the same question as dp dt equals a constant times the population. These match. There's no t's in that one either. You remember the answer to this? This is the PERT equation. You've seen that in science class. I'm pretty sure you've seen the exponential decay. That's not new for you. Well, that's the same question. The only difference is that shifted 300 over. It's exactly the same question. But let's do a U substitution just to make sure. U is equal to W minus 300. And the reason being is on the bird problem, if you don't do the U substitution, you're going to be off by a negative sign. Because it's like 300 minus W. But this one works out nicely. So this was a little bit easier than the 2012. But keep in mind that you just seen the problem. If you were working these problems, you've already seen the problem and done this problem the year before. So as you prepare for 2012, so it shouldn't have been that bad. Okay, so this is 1 over U du equals, and I'm going to pull that 1/25 out just because I can, and that's dt. Remember, we can pull those constants out. Now, if you don't put the absolute value in, it's wrong. What's the integral of 1 over u? It's the log of the absolute value of u, which is equal to 1 over 25 times what? What's the antiderivative of dt? It's t. How do you know if it's the right antiderivative? Take the derivative. No. I didn't do it with a U substitution, but some of you, like when you get the bird problem, if you don't, you're going to be off by a negative sign. Now, I haven't gotten my integration point yet because I have a U in there, and I haven't gotten my point for C. Does it need to go now or later?
Later.
Now.
What was I thinking?
I don't know. It's now. And if you put it in later, it's the case of the forgotten C. Jack.
Yeah. Similar to the case of Mrs. Branson.
That's right. Oh, I keep forgetting. I got that done. I got this point, so I'm up to 2, but I don't have my integration point until I come back here because U was W minus 300. Now I get the points. And this is what we do. We put little tally marks just like that on a piece of scratch paper. Plus C. So if you miss the integration, we write down a 0 for that. But I didn't miss it, so I get the point. And then did we ever solve for W yet? No. Those of you who did, I've never done that. Of course, those of you who don't always pay attention to me either. I'm not going to solve for W. It's too hard. Because you know what? You don't get that. That's the last point you get. Find C, and it goes to 0, 1400. And if you put those in the right place, then you don't even have to find C. You put these in the right place, you get that point. So now, we are at the end of our 15 minutes per problem. They're not going to stop you, so you're going to need to bring a watch. Because the integral of 1 over x dx is the log of the absolute value of x. plus c. And then that means the only thing I can't put in there is x can't be 0. I can put in negatives. I haven't finished it. Because t is 0 plus c, because I answered a question out of turn. Okay, so you have to know that 1 over x is the log of the absolute value. Makes a difference. Sometimes it doesn't, but when it does, it's going to mess you up. So I got 4 points. I got the other 4 points. I'm at 8. I'm looking at my clock. I've spent 15 minutes on this problem. I'm going to go to the next one and not worry about solving. Because it's 1 point. I might get 3 points on the next problem in the same time it takes me to get 1 point here. But there's a lot of things that could go wrong, by the way. So I have the log of the absolute value of w minus 300. That has not gone away yet. Equals 1/25th t plus the log of, and I can leave it 1400 minus 300 if I want. Well, I don't either, but sometimes it was 1400 minus 500, I still get the answer 1100 from some people. So it's just a common error. I do the same thing for some reason. The right side? I can put it on either side. But remember, I want to solve for w, so I'd rather put it on the right side. If I put it on the left side, I'll have negative log of 1100. It'll work, but then I just got to move more stuff around. I want to keep my moving stuff around to a minimum. Now what do we do? Now let's solve. E. And it's e to this side, and then don't simplify, because that's where some of you lost your points back. You had them, and then you lost them. It's w minus 300 is equal to e to the 1/25th t. Yes, it's a pain to write it out. And then there were a number of people, especially when I grade this, that write this. E to the 1/25th t. Either, I think they like to write it this way, e to the log of 1100. There were some people in here that did that this time too. Okay, just to let you know, to watch out for that, that is not true. Once you do that, you've lost your answer point, and you can spend 5 minutes trying to get your answer point, but it's wrong. So don't do that. Just leave it just like this. If you don't know what it is times. If you made it times, then it would be okay. But who cares? That's more time. I don't want more time. So now, how do you solve the absolute value equation? W minus, you got to get rid of absolute value first. It's equal to e to the 1/25th t plus the log of 1100. Now, if you want to check that right now and not do the negative one, you certainly may. You're not going to get penalized for not considering the negative unless the answer is negative. Or we're going to check it with the initial condition. There's the minus e to this. Is that okay? It's plus or minus. And let's test the first one. Most of the time, it's going to be the positive one, but not always. So we're going to put this in here. Okay, Declan, you got that? So it's 1400 minus 300. Is that equal to e to the 1/25th of 0 is 0, plus the log of 1100? Well, the right side is e to the log of 1100, which is 1100. E to the log of f of x, as long as this number here is 1, is f of x. Okay, you need to remember that log property. You might be able to get by without it, but this is 1100. Is that true? Yeah. So I'm going to cross that one out, which now brings up that question is, should you box your answers? Well, if you box the wrong one, then we'll look at the wrong one. We will not look at the other one. Some of you will get in the middle of a problem, and you're going to need to restart it. If it's clear it's a restart, and you're abandoning your first attempt, then we don't look at that. But if it looks like you are solving the problem 2 different ways, and you can't make up your mind which one is right, then we grade both of your solutions and average them and round down. Not up, but down. So if there's something you don't want us to see, don't waste your time erasing. Cross it out, just like that. Okay, we're almost done. And so I'm just going to copy this, and I'll slide the board in a second. Equals e to the 125th t plus the log of 1100. There we go. Now, I'm not done, because guess what? We're solving a differential equation. We're looking for a function. That's not a function yet. We solve for w. So w equals 300, and you do not need to simplify that. Just leave it. You're right, it's 1,100 times that. But as long as you get that, that's fine. And some teachers really insist on it, and I can see that, because we get 25 tests in a packet, and it's at most 5 tests per school in that packet. They split them all up. I mean, it's a logistical nightmare. I don't know how they do it. And I can see that because every student will have the same kind of pattern with whatever their teacher taught them. Or one school, maybe they all get zeros, which tells me that the teacher probably didn't teach them how to do differential equations. You see that. It is. It is. Especially in BC, it happens a lot. They're not taught the BC topics, but they're taking the BC exam. Silly. So anyway, we're here. We want you. I want everybody here to get a 5. And I think you all can. But you got to put the time in. And I know you have other things, but, you know, seriously, we haven't had any sports lately. That's true. Noah? Had a what? Oh, fun. In the snow?
In the snow.
Number 4, 2011? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 4. Let's see what it is. Oh, 4 is a really, oh, this was so hard.
Do we know the scores of these guys?
You know the average scores, but you don't know what these scores. You could try and score them. Okay, this is a tough problem. But how about if we do number 2012, the same problem that's easier?
Which one?
I think it's also 4.
No.
I don't know. I have to bring it up. Hang on.
I think it's 3.
We'll find out about 2 seconds. And then you can see that. But I'm not saying we're not going to do this problem. Don't let me forget to do this problem, because this one's really tough, but I'd rather do an easier one. Yeah. Yeah, did Mrs. Hersman go over 2007 last night? Yeah. And I'll try to go over that one. 2007, the whole exam was incredibly hard. And number 3, the average score was 1 out of 9. Well, the first one was the intermediate value theorem. The second one was the mean value theorem. The third one you could actually do. The third part. And the fourth part was the derivative of the inverse. Yeah, that's not so easy, but it was like they're kicking you when you're down. Okay, let me try this. No, don't do those lines to me. Okay, it's going to work. Oh, it did. It's not great. Okay, let's do this one. And then you can also look at your the one I gave you. And please leave the booklets here. We can come back and look at them again. And you can look at that and see what students did. You might want to look at your neighbor's book and see if they had anything. Guys, put your phones away. 2 weeks of not texting in my class. What are you going to do when it's 4.5 hours of not texting? You're going to die. Well, it's 4.5. You can't go a half hour without texting. Okay. Okay, I like this problem. I like this much better than 2011. 2011 was very hard.
Seems pretty easy.
Okay. Okay, let's look at the picture. You guys, as we're doing this, let's look at the picture. The picture tells me a lot without even doing anything. It's the only way I could copy it. For some reason, I have issues. But I see triangles here. I see a semicircle, and I see another triangle. So that tells me I'm probably going to do some geometry. Now, if you squish everything into A, then we'll read everything. But if some of you put your answer to A down in C. And guess what? I didn't read it. Can't put it after wherever it's due. Jack.
Yeah, try to tell him.
Okay, g of x is this. G of x is the signed area under the curve starting where? 1. Find the values of g of 2. So you're in the exam, you say, I don't even know what to do. Well, then do what it says to do. Well, but that's what you're going to feel like. And I'm trying to give you advice here. When you feel like you don't know what to do, it says, well, I want to find g of 2. So g of 2, I'm going to put in 2 for x. And remember, notice that what is this graph? Is this graph of g or is it graph of f? F. And I wish you could bring in colors because that might help you a little bit, but you can't. Okay, so what's it asking? What does an integral mean? It means it's the signed area under the curve from 1 to 2, not 1 to 3. I think I did 1 to 3. Read the problem. You can use a pen.
Use like a pen and pencil. It's like marking.
I think you can do that. So that's 1/2. The base is 1. What's the height?
Negative.
It's negative 1. And that's the reason why the integral is negative, because the y value is negative.
Wait,
So-
is it negative 1/2?
It's negative 1/2.
No, it's the height negative 1/2.
I could write the equation line, but I'm pretty sure it's at 1.
So it goes at
Because this is at 0, this is at 3. Well, let's write the equation of the line and find out. So y minus, I'm going to use this one, 0 equals my slope. What's my slope?
See how you get the 1/2, 1 and negative.
Base, 1/2, base times height.
Yeah, height's negative 1.
Okay, what's the slope of this? It's negative 1/2, and then it's x minus 1. Substitute in 2. So y equals negative 1/2, and it's 2 minus 1, right? Because that's what I'm trying to find out. And so that's equal to negative 1.
Oh, you're just trying to find the
I wrote the equation in the line because some of you didn't believe me when I said it's negative 1. In some years, this is totally clear as to where that is, and in other years, it's not. They're not consistent.
No, but it's 3 negative 1 there. So it can't be negative 1. 2 can't be negative.
Oh, let me look at this again.
It has to be 1/2.
It has to be 1. Well,
Yeah, he's trying to find the area of
so the x is 2. Yeah, 2 minus 1. Yeah, it's negative 1/2. Sorry. So what's the answer?
negative 1/4.
Negative 1/4. You're right. I did not look at it logically. Good job. Okay, what's g of negative 2? Now, this one's trickier because g of negative 2 is the integral or the signed area from 1 to negative 2. Do you like that order?
Put the negative in the front.
I don't have any issues going backwards, but sometimes I do get confused about the signs. So how about if we put negative and we start from the left and then go to the right? Then I'm not going to worry about it. It'll be easier. Okay, so from negative 2 to 1, that's this one.
And then that little semi.
Okay, so that's 1/2.
How do you know when to make it negative there or not?
If it's above the axis, it's positive. If it's below, it's negative.
No, like that below the
Well, this is in the wrong order. This is starting at the right and going left. Then I have to really think. So if I put it in the right order, left to right, the way we read, then I put a negative sign in front, and I don't have to think too hard.
So it'll always be negative if it's below that. Yeah.
Yes? It's 1/2 base. What's the base of that?
1.
1, right? Negative 2. And the height is 3, right? And the height is a positive 3. That's the first one. And let's do this the way I would do it. Well, I can't really do that. I have to realize that that's negative because it's what? Below the axis. So it's minus half a circle, pi. What's the radius? 1. Do you have to simplify that?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, never simplify. Unless you.
That's our problem. Those who are reading the exam. No, you have to either give an exact answer or a decimal answer.
Oh, you're on the wrong one.
If they ask you to integrate on a calculator, you have to integrate on the calculator. If you're integrated by hand, you'll still have to integrate, but if you get like the sine of pi, you can leave it the sine of pi. I specifically asked about that. And that's fine. Okay, so we got 2 points. Oh, sweet. Yeah. Okay, I got 1 point. You guys got 2. Right?
Right.
Now, sometimes these are complicated here, so that what they do is if you have the wrong sign but you have the right geometric idea, they'll give you half credit. But this one was easy, but there are other ones that are tougher. Okay, then it says find g prime of -3 and g double prime of -3. Let's go back to what we know. We know g of x, you get points for this, is equal to the integral from 1 to x of f of t dt. I want the derivative of that. So my operator is d dt. Sometimes you don't recognize it right away. It's d dt of that thing. Do you recognize what happened to the right side? That's the second fundamental theorem. So it's g prime of x is equal to, yeah, f of x. F of x. So what's g prime? Is that 3? Positive 3?
Yes. Negative.
-3 is f of -3. And I think we could write the equation of the line, or you can read it off the graph. What's f of -3? 1, 2, 3.
-3, 2.
That one's pretty good. It's 2, right? See that? I like these problems. Then, if g prime is equal to f of x, then what's g double prime? F prime of x, right? Are these problems starting to make a little more sense to you? Remember when we did them, you struggled? But now is when it comes together. At least I hope. And it's g double prime of, is that of -3 still?
We're like finding its derivative. Yeah, no one knows.
Yeah.
Negative 1.
And think about how much you've learned.
Yeah.
A lot.
Gee, we might not fail after all.
If you practice. But, Jack,
Uh,
do I need to send this video home?
yeah. Gee, give up. Honestly.
Okay, what is the slope at -3? You just find the slope. You don't even have to show any work. This is 3 to 1, so that's 2. This is -4 to -2, so that's 2, right? So the slope is, did I do it right? 1. Let's see where we get our points. We get a point for, just for the answers. So sometimes, depending on how complicated it is,
Gotta have at least like. I wanted my.
yeah, the second derivative is just a slope. The first derivative is taking the derivative of g, which is the derivative of the antiderivative. That's the second fundamental theorem. Is equal to f of, it's -3. I just looked at my graph. It's f of -3. So here, it's just the y value. Yeah. How many points do I have? I have 4. That wasn't too bad, was it? I kind of hope for one of these. Then some of them get harder. Find the x coordinate. Now, I always justify my answers first. Okay, Claire? You guys, Zach? Justify your answer first. I want, when G has a horizontal tangent line, if G has a horizontal tangent line, what's true about G prime? No. What's true about the slope at horizontal tangents? It's 0. Here's your horizontal tangent. The slope is 0. And then it says for each of these points, determine whether G has a minimum, maximum, or neither. So first, let's find where G prime is 0. So this is C. I'm going to write that down because I think that's where the point. We'll find out. So where's G prime? What is G prime? Remember?
Yes.
G prime is equal to F. So where is F equal to 0? Right here, right?
Yep.
And right there. So the candidates are -1 and 1. Then you must consider each one. Now, to have a maximum, what had to happen to your slope?
Go from positive. Increase.
Call it G prime. Has to go from positive to negative. Whoops. So what about at 1?
It goes from
This is negative to negative. So it's neither.
But at 1, it goes positive, negative.
Okay, how do I justify it? No sign change.
Wait, that's for negative 1, not 1.
No, that's positive 1. I almost did it wrong. I would normally would have gone left to right, but I wrote it down backwards. So, okay, what about negative 1?
Goes from positive.
My slope is positive and my slope is negative, so it's a max. And I would say it's a max because G prime, that's too sloppy. Goes from positive to negative. How many points is that? Another 2? Find out. What's here?
It's the multiple choice where it's
3. Yes, they're equally weighted. The free response and multiple choice. There's a multiplier in there.
Oh, yeah, G prime equals 0.
Okay, so you get a point for saying G prime or F is 0, as long as you probably said it earlier. I think they would give it. I didn't grade this one, so I don't know. You get a point for finding both candidates. So you may say to yourself, I don't need to consider 1 because I don't see a sign change, but yes, you do. So put it down and then say no sign change, therefore it's neither. So don't think it in your head. If you're thinking in your head, it needs to be written down on the paper. And then you get your answer for your justifications. So you probably had to have both right. But that's only 1 point. If you had just identified negative 1 or 1, you got 2 points out of 3.
Where are we at right now? Like 7 points?
So we got 2, 4, and let's say we couldn't justify it. We got 6. And I haven't even looked at the last question. And by the way, skip around on the questions. Just because you can't do A or B doesn't mean you can't do C or D.
Oh, D is easy.
I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Actually, know what?
It is easy. I want inflection points. Let's finish this up, and there'll be time to go. Inflection points, that's where G double prime changes sign. Don't say it's 0, because that's not true. Now, G double prime is equal to F prime. So where does the derivative of this graph change sign? It's positive here and then negative. Is that an inflection point at negative 2?
Oh, is that today?
Yes. Some people ruled it out because they said the second derivative doesn't exist. I don't care, it doesn't exist. It's still an inflection point. Okay, guys? Guys, I only got 2 minutes. Then what about here? Where we travel, this is negative, negative. There's a corner, but it still stays negative. And now it's what? At 0, it turns to what? Positive. So that is at 0. I bet I have to have them all. It slopes positive as I travel along here, and then at 1 it becomes what? Negative. No, these are inflection points. Interiors. Because you can't say the derivative change sign. The endpoints are the max min existence theorem. Yep. Okay, so you got 1 point for your answer. And if you don't understand it, you're probably not going to get the right answer. And then 1 point for the explanation because I said this changes sign. Do you understand what I mean when I say I do my justification first?
Yeah.
Tells me what to look for. It's only taken all year. Now I'm going to collect the, well, you can just put the pink books on my desk when you leave. And it's time to go. Now, try number 6 on 2012. No, the little quizzes are yours.
Number 6 on what?
2012. Do at least 2 free response questions tonight.
I'm doing it next.
That's a half hour. Do it during dinner. Say, Mom, Dad, I got to do my math.
Oh, that's dishes.
There you go. You say, I'll do the dishes for 2 weeks if you let me study now. And let's take, and Jack, let's take the phone away.